Welcome to the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost, the only program on television in Kentucky that deals with politics from a conservative perspective. So thanks for joining us tonight. And this is the first episode that we've done where we've been able to focus on what just happened in the governor's race, in the election for 2023 for Kentucky governor. It didn't go the way we hoped, and so if you watch this program at all, you know that we were very pro Cameron, which makes sense. We're all generally conservatives here. You'd think we would line up with the Republican candidate, right? So it didn't go well, and actually we kind of hinted or sensed some things leading up to the election of some issues, and so we've talked a lot about that prior to the election of concerns, and I think some of those played out, and so. But what I wanted to do tonight is bring on our regular guest, and just talk about what happened and you get their opinion, kind of do a post-mortem of what just occurred. Kentucky is a red state, right? On national level, with every national office that we have, senators, most of our congressmen, our legislature is all conservative, all Republican, but yet we can't elect a Republican governor. So why is that? What is going on? What just happened? And what's the future hold for Kentucky? And so to that point, I'm going to introduce our guest. We have, of course, Jim Waters of the Bluegrass Institute, and anxious to hear what Jim has to say. We also have Lee Watts, a special guest, Lee Watts, with us, one of our favorite commentators and pundits on the station. Also, Bob Scott, one of our regular contributors and co-hosts. So gentlemen, we just experienced this disappointing election. I mean, it was actually, I wouldn't say disappointing on all fronts. Oddly enough, Republicans and all the other statewide offices won. And just same thing happened in the Bevin election in 2019.
Well, his re-election.
His re-election, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so all the all the statewide offices, the Republicans won except for governorship. And the same thing happened this time around. I'll start with Jim. Jim, just break it down. What top three reasons why Cameron didn't win? So just give me some thoughts on this.
Well, I think some of it had to do with turnout. There was a lot of reporting this year and a big deal made in the media about how the number of Republican registrations had surpassed the number of Democratic registered votes in Kentucky. But this is a good lesson here that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to translate into a gubernatorial win.
That's right.
And so I think there has to be some thought about what's the dichotomy there between that good news and then the not so good news. I think that's one thing. And so turnout also was, I think, both parties had about 40% turnout for their candidate. Mm-hmm. So the Republicans had an opportunity to, if they would have done better at turning their voters out, mm-hmm. that could have made the difference in this election. But they didn't do it. They had the Republicans had 40% turnout. The Democrats had about 39.6. I mean, it was virtually the same.
However, there were Republicans that won statewide office.
Well, there were. And
so what is that difference?
Well, that's right. But I'm just saying, you asked for a couple of reasons. That's one of them.
That's a general
That's not the only reason.
That's right, yeah.
I have to say this. I know I'm probably this is kind of not news we want to talk about, but I think Daniel Cameron is a great guy. He's got a great personal story. He's a very good speaker. I think he's done a great job as Attorney General. He's taken some heat for decisions, and that comes with the territory. But I think his team, I don't want to say they gave him wrong advice. I think it was incomplete, maybe. I think, I do think that nationalizing the race, I don't think that was a wrong thing to do, tying Bashir to the National Democrats, and then the social issues. I don't think those were wrong, but I think you missed an opportunity with what was uniquely going on in Kentucky. In the primary, that was Kelly Craft's problem. She talked a lot about the national issues, but she wasn't real strong on what's happening here. So I think that's really a factor here. I just think it would be honest of me not to include the fact that, for example, we have a crime problem here in especially in Jefferson County. We have an education problem, especially in Jefferson County. Those were issues that he could have taken and really differentiated himself and really gotten, I think, picked up some support from more moderate suburban Republican women. Honestly,
Exactly
they care about those issues. So I think it was a missed opportunity. Now, again, I'm not saying what they did was wrong. I think it was more incomplete, if you will. That would be my perspective.
Yeah, exactly right, and I think there's some missed opportunities there for sure. And to the turnout, point, you look at the 2020 election. I think Trump won this state hands down. I think I looked at the numbers the other day. I believe it was like 1.7 million votes for Donald Trump in Kentucky in 2020, and yet in this election, Cameron was lucky to bring out 700,000. I think, or was that what it was?
700,000. No, it was under 700.
Under 600,000. So
28,000.
So exactly, right. Turnout was a complete failure.
Well, also, So what that says is I think he did a good job of using the Trump endorsement to get some attention. But at the end of the day, Kentucky, I have to give voters credit here. I think voters are more savvy than we give them credit for. They can sense, they may not know all of the nuts and bolts of policy issues, but they can sense when somebody's when there's incompleteness.
That's right.
There's not there's probably a better word than that. Maybe Lee and some of these other guys can say, but I do think that that was a problem. Yeah.
So Lee, let me get your thoughts on this. So turnout is certainly an issue, and I blame the Republican National Committee and the state Republican Party, because that's their job. Their job is to get Republicans to turn out to vote, and something failed there dramatically. And there's even been finger pointing at DeSantis, for example. Apparently DeSantis had some control over where some of these funds were spent, and nationally when it comes to these governor's races, and there's accusations now that he was using some of those funds to help prop his campaign up for president. And so don't want to unpack that too much. I don't know too much details, but it's interesting. I say that in the sense that I think the National Republican Party and the state Republican Party, I think, were woefully inadequate, and especially when it comes to fundraising. I mean, my goodness, was 17 million versus 4 million or something? Is that the number, Lee? So, Lee, what are your thoughts on some of these? Yeah.
I think that's really part of the problem. I think there's really, we were talking about the top three things, which we could say are major factors considering this recent results that we got. And first of all, I want to say is money. Again, as you said, 4 million to 17 million. When you are spending 300%, in excess of 300% more than what the other guy is, that is almost impossible to overcome. If I am a firm believer that if Daniel Cameron would have spent the same amount of money that Andy Beshear spent, he would now be the elect governor of Kentucky. There's no way getting around that. It also lets us know that the Beshear campaign was highly concerned. You don't spend $17 million if you think you've got this thing in the bag. And they knew we're going to have to rely on that. So I would say money would be their number one problem. The second problem would be timing. As I would cross the state speaking at different political events, a lot of Republican meetings, they were begging for Cameron signs and bumper stickers and things to put out, and the campaign just kept putting them off, saying, well, it's coming. We're going to wait till the last few weeks and then do it all then. While the Beshear campaign had put their stuff out months ahead of time, not only out throughout the state, but on the airwaves. And they were really able to shape the issues and to put the Cameron campaign on defensive, where he was having to try to correct the image that they had made of him, instead of projecting his own image that he would want. And then third and finally, I would say again, and you've already hit on it very correctly, which is voter turnout. There was only about a 38% voter turnout in this election. Now, the Democrats, Beshear campaign, are going to love to push this idea that Andy got, 52% of the vote. But if you think about it, he only got 52% of the 38%, which means if you do all the math, he got about 19% of Kentuckians to vote for him. So 81% of Kentuckians either voted against him or didn't like him enough to vote for him at all.
Wow.
And when you actually take that into account, it really changes everything. But so money's being spent, not dedicating enough, voter turnout, and timing. Those three things together were just the worst trifecta you could ever get. It's the anti-trifecta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And the money allowed, as Lee mentioned, the money allowed Bashir to define Cameron,
Yeah.
who was not as well known as maybe some of the other Republican candidates have been. So I do agree, and I should have included money. But I also do think there were missed opportunities in the campaign to.
We are here to defend democracy.
Misinformation poses a threat to our nation's health.
Climate change is an emergency.
Democratic socialism.
Codify one's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
But I also do think there were missed opportunities in the campaign to make up for some of that too. So.
Yeah, and I believe this is true, but I heard that the reason that Cameron decided to hold off on his rollout of his marketing effort was twofold. Was one, that they didn't have as much money, so let's wait till closer to the election to kind of concentrate our funds. But secondly, I heard it was a strategic decision by McConnell advisors that said, hey, people don't pay attention until the last 30 days before the election anyway, so let's just take whatever you got, just take all the gunpowder you have and shoot it at 30 days out. Yeah. Now, but like to your point,
but you can wait too long.
He waited too long, and he got defined by the opponent, and the opponent was very effective. Bashir was very effective in his advertising early on, specifically around the abortion issue. Mm-hmm. And let me bring in Bob Scott on this. So Bob, I'm sure everyone saw this ad that paid attention to this race of this young woman in Eastern Kentucky that described her just tragic personal situation where she was they got attacked and raped by a family member and was had, I believe she had an abortion, I believe. Is that right? But she was talking about, I would be.
She never said that she had an abortion.
Okay, that was kind of vague, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly. But it was a very powerful ad that said, hey, if I'm raped, through incest, and I can't have an abortion, well, Cameron would prevent me from having this abortion. And it was very, very potent. And this year, of all years, the abortion issue is top of mind for those that have always been pro-choice because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So it sort of activated that issue that's been sort of dormant for the past 30, 40 years. And so, Bob, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree 100% with that because, and we've talked about this before, if Roe versus Wade was not overturned, I venture to say that could have had a lot to do with making it a different election, that we just saw, and also with the amendment that they tried to pass a year ago, the Yes for Life amendment, as well, strangely enough. And you're absolutely right on the money when you talk about being defined, and that's exactly 100% what happened in this race, that Bashir was very, very effective of painting Cameron into a corner or putting him in a box that made it virtually impossible for him to escape from. And let's not forget to mention the outside money that was spent, the PAC money. I think they estimated a total of $65 million was spent on this election. And I believe the estimates are somewhere around 45 million of that being to support Bashir, in his reelection bid. So, you start combining all of that with the turnout. I've talked to some people that there were, believe it or not, there were some of those stay-at-home housewives that crossed over they maybe have been registered Republicans, but crossed over and voted for Andy. And then, the perfect storm also, and this is definitely no pun intended, but You had the calamities from the standpoint of the storms that happened from the flooding in eastern Kentucky to the tornadoes in western Kentucky, and then Bashir's infomercial, that he had during the COVID time. It made him honestly a very, dare I say, popular figure.
That's right. Yeah,
with a lot of people, and a very comfortable figure, and consequently, it was. I think honestly, there was a lot of storms that happened that did not favor Daniel Cameron, obviously, and that's hence this is where we find ourselves.
Right.
And then one other thing I want to talk about is the Bashir family name. Again, a very powerful, well-known name. Obviously, his dad was governor. Had been elected to 2 terms, and the same thing with Andy. Again, it was a conglomeration of a bunch of things. Now, I'm going to say this: I'm not ready to tuck my tail between my legs and run, and I don't think too many folks are on the conservative side. I think we got a lot of very positive things. We have a supermajority in both the House and the Senate, but.
We are here to defend democracy.
Misinformation poses a threat to our nation's health.
Climate change is an emergency.
Democratic socialism.
Codify women's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
Respecting the Judge Shepard, who also heard this case. That's amazing because they're supposed to rotate these cases, but it never happens. And this is going to end up in the Supreme Court again. Now, what the judges said in the 2021 case about that bill is if you want to have school choice in Kentucky, it has to be on the ballot. The people are going to have to decide.
Okay.
So if we can get that passed, there are 10 states right now that have universal choice. That means whatever your income, whatever your socioeconomic status, you have some options, educational options.
Okay.
If we can get this constitutional amendment passed, we'll become the 11th state in America.
So the process is we need to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot.
The legislators pass that, by the way.
Legislator passed this. Okay,
now,
right.
the governor cannot, he doesn't have anything to say about that.
Okay, all right.
He can't veto it. They're going to put it on the ballot.
For 2024?
For 2024.
Okay, so that's what Bob was talking about. They're going to be
exactly
scrambling to do
and
that.
the presidential election will be at the same time.
Right.
So it's going to be a big turnout. The teachers' unions and the Washington, D.C. groups are going to pour money into this state to mislead, misinform, mischaracterize, fearmonger, scaremongering. You're going to see it all.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons, if I could segue into why a conservative media outlet is so important.
Sure.
Because people need to have the right, accurate information about these issues, not just that one, but all issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hence this program, and hence our whole project of Kentucky's Voice, so that we hope you'll sponsor. So just Lee, just for a just break down what is school choice, just for the layman that hasn't really followed this.
School choice. School choice would be where the parent is allowed to choose where their kid's going to school. And basically the tax money would follow the student. And if I choose to send my child to the public school gets the tax money. But if I choose to send my child to a private school, a religious school, whatever it is, then the tax money follows that as well. There's also the idea that they would only be allowed to send it to public schools, because there is a law in the books now that says you can only send money to public education. And that would say, I could send my kid to any school around here, and that one school would get the money. All public schools competing against each other. We had several of the public schools arguing against this. One particular legislator is popular, very fond of telling the story. He had some teachers come and said, if people could choose to go to our school, nobody would. He said that is the absolute worst thing you could tell me.
Yeah.
So
That's a
this would
great-
bring competition. If we would start with just having the public schools competing against each other, competition always makes you have a higher quality product.
At a
And
lower
personally, I'd
price.
like to see that expanded to also private and parochial schools.
Absolutely, and it also we get a better product, just better education, but we also get to send our children to schools that reflect our values, right? Because at the end of the day, our public school system cannot operate the way it's operating now. You cannot have this huge cultural divide on basic issues such as what's a man, what's a woman, what's a boy, what's a girl. If we can't agree on that, we really can't even have public schools, because some teacher is going to teach your son that he could be a girl, or some teacher is going to, maybe if they're from a conservative perspective, believe that that's immoral, and they're not going to line up with that. Maybe you're somebody that believes in LGBT rights. So these are fundamental issues that the only way I see this education being resolved is school choice. Let everybody send their kids where they to schools that reflect their values. Because until we get a cultural consensus on these basic issues, education is dysfunctional, and it's going to remain so. But
And with charter schools, that's a public option. But opponents don't want any options. The opponents to this don't want any choice, and they don't, what Lee was talking about, they don't want any dollars.
Yeah, well,
to
monopolies
go
love
to
the monopoly.
It's all
anything
about
other than
power and control.
and money. And money.
100%. They really do not care about the betterment of the child. And that's
right.
what's disgusting, and that's what needs to change.
That's exactly
The other
right.
night, we had a forum here, and the opponents of school choice, there was very little discussion about the students. It was all about the system, not the students.
Got it. Yeah.
And so we've got to change that.
All right, last question. We're going to have another governor's election in like 4 years from now. So whoever this candidate is, whoever this Republican candidate is, what lessons should they take from this campaign? What should they do right? What did we do wrong? So
They have to raise money. They have to be good. They have to start now. In fact, they needed to start the day of the election.
Yesterday.
Raising the money. They need to. One of the things that Matt Bevin did, they should look at his first campaign, what he did. He put out a blueprint for what he stood for, and he hammered that home every stop he made, every person he talked to, and he traveled over I think it was like 200 some thousand miles. I mean, you have to be in Kentucky. People have to be, somebody mentioned, I think it was Bob mentioned, that people were comfortable with Andy Bashir. You know why? Because he was everywhere.
That's right.
Everywhere you looked, he was.
That's right.
And he didn't invite Biden here. It was him.
Yeah.
And then you have to have the right messaging, and you have to have a more complete campaign, I think. You have to talk about tax reform. That's a big issue in our state. You have to talk about school choice. You can't ignore these issues. Voters are more savvy and smarter than that.
Got it.
You have to talk about crime.
Crime.
If you're in
Oh,
Louisville,
goodness.
you got to talk about
Oh, my
crime.
goodness, yeah. Just making it, there's such an easy inroad to make on
Right.
these big cities in our state, just to talk about crime. Lee, what are your thoughts? What does the next Republican candidate need to do to win this election?
Well, I think Jim's already really hit it, and Bob, is they need to start running not just the year of the campaign. For a governor's race, you need to be running for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we see that the Democrats are very good at is they will kind of pre-select their people, and they don't really even have major primaries. And the Republicans still hadn't made up their mind in the primaries. And of course, this one, we had the most massive primary ever.
That's right.
So more running longer, allowing yourself to build up that money. And then again, we've learned this lesson. You got to start getting your message out sooner.
That's a good point. We spent a lot of energy on that Republican primary. I mean, there was a lot of money spent, a lot of energy spent, a lot of time spent. That's a good point. Yeah, and of course we'll have a Democratic primary this next time around as well, because it won't be an incumbent. But still,
And we didn't come out of that primary united. That's one of the things that Democrats seem to always be pretty good at. If they have a pretty bloody primary, and they really don't that often, but if they do, they usually come out of it united. We did not.
Yeah.
We had a situation where the pretty much the folks that did not come out on top kind of picked up their toys and went on home.
Exactly
after
right.
that. And,
Yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton can
that's another reason.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton can basically shank Bernie Sanders in the back, and he'll still vote for her at the end. You know, some of the Democrats, they still
And he'll
will
vote for
rally.
her because she knows how to bring her people together. And I think I think the nominee needs to be a person who can do that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly right.
And you have to be able to do that. I mean, if you want to win.
If you want to win.
If you want to win.
You want to win.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, listen, I think we've broke it down enough. It was a disappointing election, but listen, there's a lot of great things in this state, a lot of good people in this state. We have a lot of good things politically going on in the state.
And we're a conservative state.
And we're a conservative
We are.
state.
I mean,
and so, and honestly, that forces Bashir to run as a faux conservative on some levels. He really does. And so, as radical as they want to take it, he still runs as a moderate because he knows he has to. So keep the faith, and we're gonna have a Republican governor next time around. I'm declaring it, and it's going to happen. And so, gentlemen, thanks for being on the show tonight, and we will be back next week.
We are here to defend democracy.
Misinformation poses a threat to our nation's health.
Climate change is an emergency.
Democratic socialism.
Codify one's right to choose.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15